I think we've talked about this a pretty good number of times over the years, but it does still strike me as particularly relevant today of all days, where with what the Kansas City Chiefs have accomplished and with what Patrick Mahomes does at the quarterback position on just about a weekly basis, it really is an incredible thing that we are lucky to have a front row seat with a rooting interest around these Kansas City Chiefs. And Seth Keysor, I can't think of anybody who's better equipped right now to explain how important it is to not become numb to the greatness of this team.
Well, thank you, Josh. I really appreciate that. You're such a jerk. Welcome to Only Weird Games. Today you've got my mouth is half numb from a dental procedure, but much like Kareem Hunt, I don't let anything get in my way, but I am going to sound pretty weird.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
I gotta say, it's been hard enough just carrying a pleasant conversation with Seth before the show, trying to lock in for genuinely what your kind of main angle was after last night's game of appreciating the moment we're in right now, perhaps not becoming numb to it. It's only gonna get more difficult as the takes get more serious, but the Chiefs are still undefeated. They needed overtime against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is Seth Keysor. I am Joshua Brisco. I expect to have Nate Taylor with us at some point along the show today. But Seth, it's never easy. It's never a blowout. It's always weird. At this point, man, it feels overdone to be like, well, but the Chiefs only play weird games because we've been saying it for so long. But as Austin says in the chat, only weird gums. That's new. Thank you, Austin. Yet another weird one with a whole bunch of weird things that ended with the Chiefs doing the not weird thing, winning the game.
Yeah, that's the one thing that is continuously not weird is they just keep winning. You know, Chiefs fans, let me just start off with this. The last time you watched your team lose a game was Christmas of last year. It's November, man. It is a great time to be a Chiefs fan. That's one reason I focused more on talking about that after the game than I did, doing a little bit of analysis. There's lots of stuff to analyze. But I was just struck, similar to how my mouth was struck by a psychotic dentist earlier. Basically, what ended up happening. So I'm sorry, I got to explain this. So I went in for
Little Shop of Horrors.
I have not, but I don't even want to know what direction
that reference. It's a musical. That's a reference for Renee, honestly, more than anybody. I don't think she's listening right now. But Steve Martin plays a psychotic dentist, and he's fabulous.
Oh, it's very unsurprising. So I went in to get a couple of cavities taken care of. My first cavities in years, which is unfortunate. And as they're digging into the lower one, they just kept going. And I'm like, they're like, oh, we got to go a lot deeper than we thought. And they just kept going. I'm like, hang on, fellas, or ladies, I guess. But I was just like, so I can feel that. And since I can feel that, I'm going to go ahead and say, whoa. So then they gave me like the hardcore stuff. Now I can't feel this part of my face right here. So if I sound, longtime listeners and readers or watchers and voyeurs and lurkers who are aware of my journey with sobriety, I have not fallen off the table. Table.
That's an important,
I haven't fallen off the wagon. And if I did, I would be falling off a table. I just sound like it. But hopefully it's going to be all right. But the thing that struck me, we can all agree that social media is a hellscape, right?
Yeah, it keeps getting worse too. It's bad.
Oh, it's just somehow every time we think, and like never mind like the way sites function and all that, it itself just keeps getting worse. Like just when you think it can't get worse, it somehow does. It's kind of amazing, honestly. I respect the hustle. But one thing, and this is a reason, everyone always, I will never log off, right? That's something people say. One of the reasons is when you are online as the Chiefs are closing out yet another win, where they do the thing.
You powered through.
Okay.
I'll circle back for the comments later. You powered through.
Okay.
I'll revisit some of the fun comments.
Okay. I would appreciate people not betting on me, but fair enough.
I want to talk about that one after your take.
So being on Twitter and watching people react to Mahomes getting the ball first in overtime is about as much fun as you can have as a fan, watching everyone be like, well, that's game. It's just over. Fine. And everyone just getting upset. And it is, I honestly, more and more, other than, some of the other things that come from, some people from Boston aside, I understand Patriots fans more and more, and it freaks me out a little because it's like, oh no, I am nourished by your hatred. It is delicious. And it was so fun watching person after person be like, this is just who the Chiefs are, man. They are just going to win 95% of these games, and there's nothing you can do about it. The thing that I tweeted after the game was, one of these days, the Chiefs are going to play a game where they do not shoot themselves in the foot repeatedly. And whoever they play that day, they are going to beat by like 40. But until then, we're going to watch Travis Kelce just fumble the ball on a normal tackle. We're going to watch just Xavier Worthy, who had an incredibly productive college career, just be like, oh man, is that out of bounds?
Oh, God.
I knew I should have done something. So it's a great, incredible time to be a Chiefs fan. That's one reason why I opened the way I did. But it's a cool feeling. The defense not being as good as we've gotten used to it made me feel a little more insecure. But it was a really good feeling. Like, as soon as that coin flip happened, everyone who wasn't cheering for the Chiefs was Baker Mayfield, leaning his head back and just going, oh, because he knew. And watching Mahomes, I'm watching the GIF right now. Mahomes originally is just saying, yep, we'll receive. And then you see him look at Baker and start nodding. Because it's like, sorry, dude, you know what's about to happen. And it was great.
Hugh Jazz says, feed me, Seymour. Just wanted that clip to exist in Tucker's folder or whatever. I saw it in advance and wanted to get there. Casey says over under 5.5. Seth bites his cheek. I think you could either do I think everyone should try to place their bets, like pick the time code, like how deep into the show before he's trying to drink out of the side of a bottle now, just as everyone. I mean, he's trying to drink out of a bottle out of the side of his mouth, not an alcohol bottle, a non-alcoholic. It's just fruit drink.
Yeah.
Of some sort. Ispiro said, what a full dose of Monday Night Football does to an MF. I saw, there was one more that was very funny that I wanted to underline, but I'll see if I can find who said it. But it was, Seth, next time, just watch Red Zone. That's from Nate Dogg. Just turn on Red Zone next time, Seth.
Pat Pazlou says it'd be funny if the dentist talked about the hot married women he hits on at the gym.
We may not get Seth
jerks.
again. This might be his last episode.
Yeah, we got purple drank.
Drunk
Okay,
with the spirit.
You know what? It was a rough game to watch for a variety of reasons, but man, the Chiefs are so good. They're so good at winning games, and it just doesn't matter. And look, hey, shout out to the Bucs. And especially their offensive coordinator and their interior defensive line. Those two things made that a game.
Let's start with Mahomes at the top, and it looks like Nate's here. So Tucker, you can just slide Nate into his slot whenever he's ready to go. But let's start with Mahomes from kind of the 30,000-foot Mahomes view, Seth, because we have gotten two very Mahomesy looking games in a row, and in this case, we'll get to all the weapons and everything else. Hey, Nate.
Hello.
But what did you see from Mahomes last night that did feel so Mahomesy again?
You can see him clearly. He's made a decision. I'm done bailing out of pockets. I'm done doing that, almost to his detriment a few times, because the interior line was getting worked over a little in pass pro early. And of course they recovered by just smushing the Bucs down the stretch, which is great. But he was just in total command of the offense in terms of, I'm going to find guys in the zones. I'm going to make tough throws where they need to be made. I'm going to do everything that's necessary to move the offense forward. And then every third down, he just annihilated it. And that was the biggest thing. That's one thing that allows the Chiefs to be a kind of unique ball control, grind you out team, is that he can also, you can convert 70% of your third downs because you have Patrick Mahomes. So the third down work was what impressed me the most. And watching him, he did a little bit of everything. He did some of the crazy creation stuff. He did some of the throws into tight window stuff. Sometimes he did them at the same time, like to Hopkins, which was, man, those guys. I thought I was pretty optimistic on how well it would work, and I'm gradually like, I think this might work even better than I thought. But he was doing the thing that we've talked about since the last couple of years, where he just toes that line where he's the ultimate game manager until it's 3rd and 6, and the play call didn't quite work. Then he'll get you those 6 yards or more. If you don't step out of bounds, which it's been a rough few weeks for Xavier Worthy. I think he's going to be fine. He still gets open on film. He still stretches the field, still pulls coverage, but it's been a rough few weeks. That's what impressed me, though. The ability to vacillate back and forth from one type of quarterback to the other on a snap-by-snap basis is something that's so unique to him and so much fun to watch.
I just want to echo a comment from Anita here. Seth, can you start over? I was distracted by the cute puppy.
Sure. So the thing about Patrick Mahomes...
If you're listening, Maple, the Taylor family dog, made a wonderful appearance there.
It is a very good dog.
Mid-breakdown from Seth. Nate, I'm going to kick it to you on the thing that I am most interested to hear about from you today. Also, if you missed anything previously, I'm not going to explain what's going on with Seth's face. You're just going to have to catch up with it in real time, and you can theorize throughout the show if you'd like to get into guesses. But he's fine. But, well, he's as fine as usual. When Patrick Mahomes scrambles to his right, shovel passes to Samaje Perine, throws a touchdown, and crumples to the ground, stays there for a bit, and then ends up getting helped off by a couple members of the Chiefs staff. What's Arrowhead like in that moment? What's the press box like? And then if you want to take us all the way through, of course, you've written about this on The Athletic already. What is that story for you of Patrick Mahomes going down, staying down, and then coming back in before the Chiefs took the field on offense again?
I wrote about it, and it becomes one of those things where it's the only moment that matters in the entire game. I had a hell of a time because it's week 9, it's Monday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As we said earlier last week, they're supposed to win by 10, double digits. Like, no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. I'll just hang out in the parking lot even longer than usual. I'll just be with Anwar and the crew, and I'll participate in some pregame tailgating activities. That's as far as I'll go. And let's just see what happens, because
walked in looking like Seth.
I mean, it's just one of those things where you're just like, okay, like something will happen, cool, whatever. It was an interesting game, but when he goes down, that becomes the only thing that really matters. And it's unfortunate because what I was told after the game by a couple people in the organization and on the grounds crew, that field is a lot longer lengthwise than it normally is at this point in the season, because KU football is playing its games in Arrowhead. So the field is not as mowed or as trimmed and in pristine condition as possible. There's been a ton of rain over the last few days, and there's only so much your cleats can do when you make such a sudden move and you're planting hard on one leg versus the other in a slick field. So that had a lot to do with him essentially rolling his ankle and, aggravating it. The worst fear, of course, is you think it's a non-contact ACL Achilles injury, and that the season, in essence, is toast. And then he gets up and he starts walking. And at that point, based on having this job for as long as I've had it, yeah, here we go. Where's Andy Reid? Where's Patrick Mahomes? Let me get my binoculars. Let me stretch out and really zone in on what's about to happen. So the funny thing is they put him in the tent, right? I see him go to the, the little table there. ESPN, I think, had like an image of it. The tent goes over, and I'm like, guys, you don't understand. Like, guys, you don't understand. And in less than 2 minutes, because that's my job is to keep track of these things. In less than 2 minutes, he walks out of the tent. Hey, Carson, put your helmet down. Hey, coach, I'm good. So it brings back all these memories, of course, of the 2022 AFC divisional round against the Jacksonville Jaguars. There was not a meeting of the minds this time, which I, from a dramatic standpoint,
position to see it.
Yeah, from a dramatic standpoint, I kind of needed it, but also there's no Eric Bieniemy that has to like step in between the two men and say, can you just do the right thing? Can you just be smart about your body? And then we get the bleeps and the throwing of the coat. So we didn't get that. But by the time he started doing his dropbacks, I said, okay, here we go. We've been here before, kids. Now the game just got really interesting. And I cannot stress this enough, ladies and gentlemen. He played better after he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
This is not supposed to happen. That's not normal. None of this really makes any sense. He's limited in mobility, so his accuracy improves. He feels pain, so his decision making gets pristine. Hey, the game is at its most critical moments, and he just completes every important, essential third down. I mean, poor Baker Mayfield. Just, as Seth said earlier, poor Baker Mayfield, because you cannot ask more from Baker Mayfield other than Baker Mayfield going up to Todd Bowles and choking him to take him off the field. Now, I've argued that Baker Mayfield doesn't have quite that gumption. He doesn't have the cachet to really cash that check, even though he has
ranked the top 3 quarterbacks most likely to choke their head coach on national television and get away with it.
Yeah, get away with it. But you noticed,
Deshaun Watson's the only one who wouldn't get benched for doing that. Obviously not currently, but if he went healthy.
Yeah, guaranteed contracts gives you a whole set of abilities to really wield that power.
I think if Josh Allen did it, we'd have a very divided country on whether, that tracks.
Look, man, he's my MVP candidate. So if whatever he does, that just adds to the lore of his MVP season, right? If he chokes Sean McDermott and they go on and win, he's the coach now.
Sorry, obviously, I should have opened with this. Aaron Rodgers could murder any member of the Jets organization, and he would maybe get a raise. I don't know.
Yes, so Baker Mayfield hasn't quite got there, but he really should have went up to Todd Bowles and choked him. That's all I'm saying, or at least attempted to get into a kerfuffle. Because man, I don't know who it was on Twitter. I should have saved it, but things are moving fast. I'm trying to do my job effectively in the press box. But I did see that someone said, hey, man, again, he's hurt, which sort of activates another level of excellence for Mahomes. And you have a chance to win the game. It's like turning your back on Michael Myers.
Right. There's an argument to be made that their timeout decision with 31 seconds left was even worse.
Worse, yes.
Because they'd gotten the first down, if I recall.
Yes.
And I understand the thought process there in that you want to make sure to be able to run multiple plays. But if you don't call a timeout, you have the option to run or pass there.
Yes.
And so, because if you run, you don't get it, you still have your timeout, and you've run some. Because the one thing that I actually think is kind of a good point some people have made, which Nate, I had a dentist appointment, and so that's like right here.
You're
No. I just can't. I can't feel any of this.
Hey,
he's not high. He just can't feel his face when he's with you.
Hey, what I want you to do is open your nose and just take more just. Okay, here we go. Like, let's. Woo! I want you to
In
do
the chat told him to just watch Red Zone next time, and that's
I mean, is there a way to divide Red Zone into small lines that you can snort immediately?
Man, I'll tell you what, watching Red Zone, that's the one thing about when the Chiefs play like primetime stuff. Watching Red Zone with no Chiefs game on is just so, it's like, man, the NFL is just going to keep making money forever.
Okay, I have an idea. They're not going to do this now because it's too late. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, I would recommend that you all order pizza tonight because it's election night in America. But if it was possible for MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, and I guess ABC to agree to like an election red zone where we got Kornacki on one board. We got
this is a good idea.
Guy from CNN
I still don't want it.
on one board. The guy from Fox News on another board. Like he's in
fair.
He's just counting Michigan and Kornacki's in Pennsylvania, and we got another guy in Georgia. Like I would
Tucker, pull the lever. Pull the lever for why do you even try real quick. The problem is that the actual coverage isn't interesting. Red Zone is, hey, there are 8 games happening at once. You know the interesting stuff. And all election night is like, they're counting ballots in Wisconsin. We've got a little while to go.
Let me go to Carolina.
And here comes Georgia in a couple of hours. Like they're doing recounts somewhere already. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But it's like election night coverage is, can we keep our energy up with a relatively low number of individual things happening?
Yes.
And Red Zone's like, there's so much happening. You got to shove it up your nose.
Yeah, these Saquon jump backwards. Forget about it.
I want Al Michaels tonight. Is what I would like. Actually, I want someone who openly doesn't want to be there anymore.
Oh
John King. Man. Hey, John, I need you to give us a quintessential Jameis Winston performance tonight because my God, Jameis Winston he has been incredible for 2 weeks. I watched Red Zone with my dad on Sunday. And I said, he can't get any higher than that excellent performance of throwing a game-ending interception and then throwing a game-winning touchdown on literally back-to-back plays. I said, Dad, we're gonna watch a hell of a fall. And guys, what a crash! What a crash! Oh, he was terrible against the Chargers, and I loved every second of it. Loved it.
So
can you be wrong and right at the same time? I don't know, John Kling. That's what I'm asking. I'm asking you to be right about Pennsylvania and wrong about Georgia at the same damn time.
That'd be entertaining if nothing else. What I was gonna say, so that's why I sound a little funky, Nate.
Right.
Because of the election?
The Buccaneers. Yep. The Buccaneers calling timeout and leaving Mahomes because then they score the next play, right?
Yes.
So for one, you hurry up to the goal line and see if you can run the ball in, and now there's like 20, 19, 18 seconds, whatever. By doing what they did, they got to a point to where their coach had to actually think, okay, 27 seconds. Oh, and they have all 3 timeouts.
Mm-hmm.
And our guys have not been able to cover Hopkins, and Worthy's had a bad night, but that dude is a real fast.
Yep.
I can understand saying if we go for 2 and don't get it, we lose. If we go for 2 and get it, do you think, and I've been thinking about this all day, and this is the insanity of who Patrick Mahomes is. A coin flip is 50-50.
Yes.
Do you think that the chances of Patrick Mahomes drive, because a 2-point conversion, another 50-50, a little, it's like 54%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the chances of Patrick Mahomes driving down the field, knowing he has to, right? There's no other options.
Yes.
Is higher than 50-50? I think it is.
I think it is. It's higher.
I don't think it is, and it's certainly not when you account for the fact that the coin flip doesn't decide the game. That gives you a chance to go on a touchdown drive to decide the game. I think he should have gone for 2, and I'm apparently on the side that is slightly on the negative of many of the analytical models.
Which is hilarious.
Bowles talked himself out of this one 2 weeks.
It's the first time ever that it's like the analytics say no, kick the field goal, and everyone else is like context. That's Patrick Mahomes. Go for 2. The man's got voodoo, and Baker Mayfield knew, and that was part of the magic of it, though, that Mahomes. At times, we used to bemoan several years ago when teams started going for it more often against the Chiefs. We used to bemoan like, oh man, because the Chiefs are so great, they're forcing teams into smarter decisions. This was more like you could almost just see okay, but if I do this, then they might do that. They're gonna have all 4 downs to work with. Maybe we'll win the coin flip. Our offense has been moving the ball. I get it. But it was an interesting moment. The timeout made that decision harder for him than it needed to be, I think. I think if he hadn't taken that timeout and there were 10 seconds left, I think then it's like, yeah, let's go for 2. Now it's a one-off type thing rather than thinking about all this other stuff.
Some coaches hate losing more than they love winning, though. I mean, like that felt like the onus of it all. When the Chiefs, including the kick, the Chiefs took their first snap on that last drive with 19 seconds, I think. Maybe, that doesn't 27, and then I don't know. ESPN's clock here is odd, but it was 27 on the kickoff, and there was no return. But so sub 30 seconds. You guys are obviously right about the timeout usage, but your options there are 2 yards to force Patrick Mahomes to get into field goal range in 27 seconds, or go to overtime. He still has a chance to do that, which they attempted to do, but obviously they punted instead of going for it on 4th and 1. They, of course, would have gone for it if they were losing at that point. But you still give Mahomes a chance, so that's still a factor. And then you go to overtime and flip a coin, and if you win the coin toss, Baker Mayfield and Cade Otton get to try to get this 1 touchdown drive on Steve Spagnuolo, or you give the ball back to Mahomes again with either a chance to win it or tie it, depending on what the Bucs accomplish. It just it seemed so easy to me. Like, let's just wrap this up right now. We are on the 2-yard line. This is the most gassed the Chiefs defense is going to look on the end of this drive. I don't know.
You go for it.
Yeah, well, and I do think too, like there's 2 factors here. If you go for it, I imagine the Chiefs will let the Buccaneers show their formation, and because they have 3 timeouts, they will call a timeout and discuss what the Buccaneers present. The other scenario that I think is fascinating too is if they go for 2 and get it, and it's still 27 seconds, yes, you are forcing Patrick Mahomes into a unusually adverse situation that's weirdly an advantage because it's not just him. I have to remind people it's him and it's Harrison Butker, right? Like, you get anywhere near midfield, even on a rainy night.
Oh, yeah. If you're within 65, Butker's hitting that. And like, now, if it were like before halftime, probably not. If it were during the middle of the game, probably not. To win the game, I would bet on Butker hitting that if you're within like 65, which that is,
and we just
that
saw
is
Tyler,
nice.
We just saw Tyler Bass, which was also one of the more shocking things in Red Zone history yesterday, or 2 days ago. We saw Tyler Bass, who missed the crucial game time field goal in the division round last year, make a 61-yarder to beat the Dolphins. So obviously kicking has advanced to like such an astronomical degree that, if you get to midfield, you legitimately have a chance. And with 27 seconds and let's say 2 timeouts, I think Patrick Mahomes probably gets the Chiefs towards midfield or even past midfield for Harrison Butker to attempt a game-winning field goal. It's
First
very
play of that drive was 9 yards to Peyton Hendershot. I think we might be overstating how automatic that would have been.
I think they call a different play.
I think, but they also could have won it in regulation on that drive.
Yeah.
2-1. We've outvoted you, Nate. We got to go for it.
And Bowles also they still had to play against Patrick Mahomes in the Chiefs offense in overtime too. Like, they didn't get to swap him out for another lesser quarterback. I don't know. I'm not surprised that Todd Bowles specifically didn't go for it. Andy Reid after the game said he was glad he didn't. I think that says a little something.
That says a lot. Yep.
But look, Todd Bowles wanted it to come down to a coin toss. And if you want to come down to a coin toss, you can do it on the field, Chiefs fans. You could be on the field at the 50 for the first coin toss inside GEHA Field for the official coin toss at a Chiefs home game this season. Visit Chiefs.com/GEHA right now, and you can enter to win a chance to be on the field for the march to the three-peat. Plus, you can score other exclusive prizes. Enter for a chance to win at Chiefs.com/GEHA. GEHA is the proud partner of the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll take a timeout, come back, talk about the supporting cast that Patrick Mahomes went to, plus a little bit about where the defense stands on the other side of a quick break.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
All right, let's talk about the AAR three-peat that is easier read than said, but 35-year-old Travis Kelce, 32-year-old DeAndre Hopkins, 29-year-old Kareem Hunt, and this Chiefs offense is built out of elder statesmen at this point. Hunt hits the 100-yard mark. Kelce hits the 100-yard mark, tying his career high in receptions with that Jags game that Nate mentioned earlier, catching touchdown passes from Patrick Mahomes and Chad Henne in that game. So the most passes he's ever caught from Patrick Mahomes in a single game. And again, tying that playoff record. And Hopkins, of course, 8 for 86 for 2 touchdowns. Seth, I spin the wheel. It's got those 3 guys' names on it. Which one does it land on? It your turn.
I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins, Joshua.
Seth, DeAndre Hopkins, all yours.
Oh, he's so good.
Nate, I'm going to spin this wheel. Oh, you had more? Okay.
For one thing, we were talking about this before the show, and if you were doing a fantasy football draft before the 2018 season, you would have had to pick any of these 3 guys in the first round.
Right.
Because Hunt was just coming off like a 1,300-yard season. Hopkins had like 1,400 or 1,500 yards, like some ungodly number. Kelce had like 1,000, 1,100. I mean, these were all great. This is the 2018 Fantasy All-Star team. Probably could have gotten Mahomes in like the 5th, 6th. And then, my God, you would have won your fantasy league. Hopkins has been better in the Chiefs offense early on than I expected him to be this early on. And that is really something. Now it makes me wonder, like, is it just going to be better faster than I thought it would be? But like, that doesn't mean like the ceiling is going to raise commensurate. But he and Mahomes outside, there's been a couple plays in each of the last 2 games where they weren't quite on the same page, right? Last time he didn't get quite enough depth. This one, the one that almost got picked. Yeah. He didn't realize, and that's something they'll talk about. Hey, in this game situation, when we're, getting on the clock, you ever watch the play out? You ever watch 13 seconds? You see that route Kelce ran there? Sometimes I'm just going to put the ball right on you, so be looking for it immediately if the D-back is hanging back there. He'll know that for next time because the defensive back expected it, and he sure didn't. That's why people will like talk about that being a potential pick. I'm going to make up my mind on that. I don't know. Being not on the same page.
That was Winfield too, right? Winfield's been on the field with Mahomes more often than DeAndre Hopkins has.
Yes. And it's still a potential pick. It would have been a crazy good catch. But here's the deal. Outside of that, he was getting to the spots Mahomes expected him to. He's just such a good route runner. He understands where he needs to be versus zone. We have all that already with Juju, though.
Yep.
The difference with Hopkins, first and foremost, is he separates against man. You go watch those 2 touchdowns. That was man coverage both times. And let me just tell you, you can already see them starting to put Hopkins on the backside of the formation by himself. And you see Mahomes looking. It's like, I think Mahomes, it's going to end up with at least 1 pick this year where he's just force feeding it to Hopkins. But I think it's going to end up with like 12 touchdowns too. Because you can see Mahomes
used to that being Justin Watson, Seth.
Yeah, you can see him see him looking and like, man, there's just one dude over there with you. Just one. Guys, I think I'm going to, and until teams adjust, I think you're going to see them. Cause the way he opens up on these slants, it's so demonstrative. The way he drags that step as he's coming through, it's so demonstrative of what route running does for a guy. And that's one reason why when everyone says, DeAndre Hopkins isn't a great athlete and he became really good at separating. So maybe player X, right, who isn't a great athlete. Any player who's good enough to make the NFL, who becomes an elite route runner, can be a really good receiver. But it's really hard. It's really hard to get there.
Really
It's really hard
hard.
to have all the characteristics that you need. And his attention to detail is so good. So that's something that separates him from Juju. He can separate from man at a higher level than I really expected, honestly, on the rare occasions that he's getting those opportunities. The second thing, those hands, man. Even with that first touchdown, even when he's just catching the football in the end zone, you just see the way his hands just envelop the ball, and you're like, that dude is not dropping that. And the difference between that and even Kelsey, who has always had good hands but not incredible hands, it's such a freakish thing to watch. And then sometimes, hey, I'm going to put this right in the middle of these three defenders. I'm going to need you to go ahead and grab it. Can you imagine the level of confidence Mahomes gained in Hopkins? That, by the way, that throw.
Oh, utter. He
He wasn't just chucking it up. He put that into like a 1 foot by 1 foot window. And then Hopkins bringing that down. That was like oh my goodness. Like this is like, it's an entirely different dimension for the Chiefs offense. Not just this year, but pretty much any year. Even when they had Hill didn't do stuff like that. Hill is on track to a Hall of Fame. He did a bunch of other things at an incredible high rate. But I'm so excited to see what the Chiefs dial up. One of the things Mahomes talked about after the game, and he talked about after the first game too, is when he's one-on-one, he's winning, and I got to find him. And I think you're gonna keep seeing that. I think his usage rate is gonna be wide receiver 1 usage, which can only help everyone else, including Worthy.
Did you hear, Seth, that DeAndre Hopkins after the game acknowledged to us that he ran the wrong route on that play?
No.
And
I missed that. Really?
And they still made it work. Yes. His most impressive catch between two defenders with his quarterback being swallowed in the pocket.
Oh, he initially ran the wrong route before he not flattened, but before he went vertical? No way.
Yes, he acknowledged, I ran the wrong route, and Patrick still gave me a chance, i.e. he still rescued me from my own mistake. Because if you look at it, I think he and Kelsey are too close to one another based on the spacing. And then at some point, DeAndre just realizes, well, no one's up the field. Maybe I should just go up there. I guess Pat has told me, keep going.
Not even that was a design downfield shot.
No,
maybe Xavier Worthy just needs to start freelancing, Seth. Maybe that's the plan to get more Worthy deep shots. Just have him start looking over and shaking off Andy Reid like a catcher.
Yes,
or a pitcher. The pitch com,
Yeah, he acknowledged the two things he acknowledged after the game was, I thought he wanted me to carry through the zone, obviously after, late in the regulation for the incompletion. And then I didn't run the right route, and he still threw it to me, and I caught it. And where does loyalty begin, kids? It begins right there when you make a mistake and he throws you a 50-50, really like 30-70 ball, and you come down with it. Oh, that right there, kids, is where loyalty begins on both of them.
Yes, because it's on both ends.
Yes. And it only flourished from there. So I know the guys in the post-game talked about it, Kent and Maddie, but just can you imagine like that play happening? And then whether it's Andy Reid or Matt Nagy or whoever was like, well, we're in the red zone, so why don't we have the Bucs look at Travis Kelce right at the goal line so that DeAndre Hopkins can just be 8 feet tall in the back of the end zone?
He's so tall.
So tall. And again, this is not a fair comparison because one guy's been in the league 12 years and one guy's been in the league for 8 games. But hey, you see that, young man? You see that? That's how you control your feet near the boundary. Because he jumped and it was never in doubt that his feet were still in bounds. So, marvelous performance. And then on top of that, there is, I don't want to overstate it, I guess. But this is something that I've kept in mind because based on the election today, kids, in a certain state, we are getting to the point of Arrowhead Stadium that feels very, very similar to the old Yankee Stadium of the Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera Yankees, where all of a sudden, whether it's Aaron Boone or Gary Sheffield or Kenny Lofton or just anybody of like any consequence, Paul O'Neill, Scott Brocious, any of those dudes.
Tito Martinez,
the allure of Yankee Stadium kind of galvanized and overwhelmed guys. And that happened last night for DeAndre Hopkins. And I wanted to tell DeAndre, hey, dog, that's not even the best of Arrowhead because it was raining. It was raining and it was kind of cold. And like, it's the Bucs. No one gives a shit about the Bucs.
So I was.
But he got emotional.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you about because I saw that in his interview. But was that consistent with how he seemed? He seems almost overwhelmed with some of it.
Yes.
Not in like a way like he can't take it, where he's just like, I identify. Okay, this is an exaggeration, but Nate, I don't think you were with us during an episode. I think it was just me and Josh, where we were talking about some life thing, some whatever. And I just remember I started to say something about my life and like how grateful I am for all the things that I have that I have not earned, that I don't deserve. And it was really funny because it just came out of nowhere. And I was like, and if you're talking about me, man, and we were both like, whoa,
Hey.
got a little, go up. But that was like, you could almost see him in that moment where you can see like, he seems very appreciative of Tennessee and all that. And he's been on fringe contenders before, but never really a team that made it over close to the top. So this is just a completely different vibe for him. So was that consistent with what he was showing the rest of the night, not just that interview?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, it's almost like he can't find the words at times, but he's obviously eloquent. He's obviously been in a number of situations. So I think that informs his gratitude or his perspective on things. But it is happening fast. I mean, he wasn't a member of the Chiefs less than 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's insane.
Also, his history makes sense. He made his first Pro Bowl in 2015, catching passes from Brian Hoyer, Ryan Mallett, TJ Yates, and Brandon Weeden. In 2017, he returned to the Pro Bowl on a season behind Tom Savage and Deshaun Watson. The best quarterback, I mean, that, and maybe he had enough of good Deshaun Watson in that range that he was able to say that he's the best quarterback that he'd played with before. But then, you got Kyler in Arizona, and then Kyler ended up getting hurt for part of that there. And then, obviously, purgatory since then. Like, the fact that he can run the wrong route, adjust it, be covered by, let's say, 2.5 defenders at minimum, and that a quarterback can put it in that 1 foot by 1 foot. Patrick Mahomes put that football back in the box it came in, and it landed in DeAndre Hopkins' giant hands. It makes sense that that's special to him. It should be. Like, it's kind of old hat to Travis Kelce, who still is very appreciative of it all. But, like, this has been his career for years now. This is a totally different... And DeAndre Hopkins, if you didn't see, tweeted just a picture of New England Patriots, Tom Brady, and Randy Moss hugging. He tweeted that with just, like, an ellipses today. He's makes so sense that that's how he's thinking because I had his game log open earlier. Obviously, this is not a receiver stat, but I think he has a losing record in his career. It's like that's got to weigh on you as there are a lot of great receivers who have come through this era, but one of the definitive receivers of this era, like in a way that I think Julio also is, and hopefully I'm kind of hoping that they all end up in the Hall of Fame. But I also started playing fantasy football around the times that these guys were taking over the league, so I'm biased. But it makes a lot of sense that that's overwhelming in the way that it is.
The reason I mentioned the election a minute ago is based on the governorship of Missouri. That is where the future of the stadium kind of hangs in the balance to some degree. But I ultimately think the stadium, at least as of now, will probably not be around in 2032. So as people talk about what old Yankee Stadium used to feel like before they went to the new Yankee Stadium, and it'll never feel the same again. Like, that's sort of the That's sort of the backdrop to DeAndre Hopkins and what he's feeling. And it's also the backdrop to Kareem Hunt, because he never thought he was ever going to play in that stadium again, wearing that uniform again for another 100 yards on another 27 carries on another night where he ends the game and is kissing to the crowd. I mean, he was a little bit more in control, but he was also emotional too, where you could just tell he was just like, wow, I literally gave everything I could and we won. We're still undefeated. And like, I won in the locker room, he was like, I won the game. And we're like, yeah, man. Like, yeah. He's like, I think I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Mick Schaefer from 41. He was like, when was the last time you had a game-winning walk-off touchdown? And he was like, Pee-wee?
Right. Yeah.
So that was not supposed to be a special night. That was just, hey, we're gonna put Mahomes on primetime because you want to watch Mahomes in primetime. Well, who are they playing? It ain't the Eagles like last year. It's not an AFC opponent. Don't you, ESPN? Don't you put that?
They
in my
just
face.
played the Saints in prime time. Why are we doing this to the NFC South again?
Hey, ESPN a couple days ago was like a Super Bowl rematch, and I said that Super Bowl was 4 freaking years ago.
These teams are completely different.
These two teams are not the same. So
even
they're struggling to promote it. Yeah.
Even after these 2 wins, DeAndre Hopkins' career record is 81-89. So he was 10 games under 500 when he arrived in Kansas City. Which again is not about DeAndre Hopkins. I think anybody would know.
Yes.
It's just a lot of losing to do as a great player. Also, to your Kareem Hunt point, Nate, if you would have told me before the season, what's more likely? DeAndre Hopkins scores 2 touchdowns in his second game as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs, or Kareem Hunt scores the game-winning walk-off touchdown, I would have put everything I owned on DeAndre. Oh, DeAndre Hopkins will probably be a Chief. That makes sense. Kareem Hunt is never coming back. Seth, I don't think we had a similar level of distrust in Travis Kelce putting up another 100-yard game, but that was like Mahomes at the podium after the game. Somebody said, 14 catches for Kelce. Like, I did not know that he had 14 catches. It was a game where it felt like, for the first time in a while, I mean, to degrees, I suppose, Chiefs needed 7 yards. Mahomes could find Kelce, and it was going to be there pretty much every time, with the exception of Kelce's like twice a year sort of infuriating, silly fumble. That's out of the way for the month now, hopefully. Where should we be now in the great Travis Kelce discourse of 2024?
Travis Kelce's yak days are largely behind him if someone's closing to make the tackle. Now,
Unlike
in the open field, he's got still wiggle and he's got acceleration to where he can do some stuff, but he doesn't break tackles anymore. And almost as importantly, he doesn't really try. Like he's reached a point where he's like, nah, I'm going to protect myself. We're going to be okay. Other than that, he's incredible. He opens up the same way. His way of winning, that honestly could work for another 5 years. Do I think he'll play for another 5 years? No. But he looks terrific. And it's also, he's blocking like it's 2019 again. Like
I wrote about that.
And so that's interesting to me. And to me, at least with Hopkins in town, maybe it's demonstrative, like, you know what? I don't have to do everything. And because otherwise, like with someone Worthy struggles with a larger role, which, maybe to be expected, I think he'll bounce back. It is what it is. But like, that would be like a major plot line. Whereas now with Hopkins in a clear wide receiver 1 role, it's like, well, no, we can work with you on this. Let's figure out what you can do. We'll put you in a position to succeed as you grow, which basically means you're going to see Worthy, I think, demoted is a strong word, but I think you're going to see him on the plan they originally had him on. Because they've tried. Okay, we're going to throw you into a wide receiver 1 role in this offense. He clearly can't handle that right now. He can still do a lot of other things that really help. Anytime you see a dude catch the football wide open in the middle of the field, watch the replay and see who drew those safeties. Because those safeties, even though they haven't now thrown deep to him in 2 straight games, those safeties are still like, oh my goodness, he's fast. And they start to run, and that opens up the field. But it's cool watching Kelce have space created around him and not need to do everything. You see the energy it gives him. And so I'm just, they got an old, it's kind of funny because the Chiefs are talked about as one of the youngest teams in the league. And it's like, I mean, yes, they're going to have some old heads to replace here pretty soon. The Kareem Hunt storyline's been great. The whole thing has been really fun to watch. And I just can't wait to see the Kelce chapter continue to unfold. Because I do have a nagging feeling about this year. I've got a nagging feeling about it, but we'll see.
On that eerie post-Halloween note, let's talk about the defense for a second. And then also I want to get to where let's talk about the defense without getting into what they didn't do at corner today, and then I want to put a button on that near the end. But ultimately, Baker throws for, I think it was 200 yards on the nose. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 200 yards. Leading receiver is Kate Otten by a mile. Not a good day in coverage from the linebackers. Not a lot of Leo Chanel in this game. That seems to be pretty matchup dependent, but not a good day in coverage for Bolton. Certainly, it seemed like Tranquil either. It's kind of a double-edged sword because the tight ends have been the problem for the Chiefs defense this year, but also Kate Otten was the best healthy weapon on this team. So it could be a little bit of both, perhaps. But the Bucs put up 24 points, which feels like more than you'd expect against how excellent this Chiefs defense has been. Obviously, no Evans, no Godwin. Where are you guys at on the Chiefs defense? Did anything change anything for you? As I will also note, the Buccaneers' leading rusher was Bucky Irving with 7 carries for 24 yards.
One thing concerned me, and one thing only. I know Seth said this earlier about the Buccaneers being a little bit ahead of the Chiefs in terms of blitzing throughout much of the first half. And then I think based on that, it was a little bit odd, but I find it instructive too that Spags really didn't blitz in the last drive of regulation for the Buccaneers. Hey, keep everything in front of you, rally and tackle. Hopefully Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, Joshua Uche win maybe a one-on-one. The only thing that concerns me is Baker Mayfield, to his credit, without any good wide receivers of any high caliber, said 2:30. All right, I am ready to hike the ball now. Because I think the first 3 quarters were mostly a Kate Otten smoke and mirrors, incredible game plan show. Where it was screens, it was misdirections, it was counters, it was jet sweeps, it was Baker on rollouts, and get the ball out of your hands. That's Chris Jones. You know? And so, because they had no receivers, it was such a non-traditional game plan that Trent McDuffie was like, "What am I doing here? I guess I have to tackle, which I always do, but like, Kate Otten was good." You know, they found multiple ways to move him around, to get him one-on-one matchups, favorable. Hey, all credit to them. But Chris Roland Wallace is okay as a coverage guy. He is good use of a blitzer in dime personnel. And Joshua Williams is a mixed bag at this point. I think that is the biggest concern, considering that Spags will probably have better pressures for Bo Nix moving forward. And the Broncos' offensive line might not hold up as well as the Buccaneers' offensive line held up.
And that's the offensive line. I'm glad you touched on that. The Chiefs weren't getting outside of a few really nice snaps from Chris Jones. They weren't getting a lot of pressure with 4. The Bucs have a really good offensive line, and they're built around that. They schemed up a lot of stuff. To hear, I'll just be really honest, to hear Chiefs Twitter during the game, you'd swear that Baker threw for 350. And that it was
certainly most of it to wide receivers, you'd think, right?
Exactly. There were
80
a few
some yards to receivers, right?
And like some of these, like some of these, the crosser that was late in the game. I mean, that wasn't man coverage. That wasn't a corner getting cooked.
No.
I would just say they weren't getting a ton of pressure with 4, and when they were blitzing, they had good answers for it in terms of, okay, they're blitzing, so you're going to be one-on-one, and he's not going to be able to have good leverage, so we're going to have you run a speed out or whatever. Now, were they as good in coverage as Jalen Watson? No. But honestly, that felt more narrative to me than anything else. I want to see how they look, because the Raiders receivers had some success against them too, particularly Myers. And so I'm just not sure I'm really buying it because I've had people say, oh, no, the corners were getting cooked all night. And I rewatched the first drive and I'm like, that's not what's happening here.
No. I just think in a 2-minute drill sped up, they're throwing it,
that's
they're throwing it. That's that final drive was the concern where it's like, ooh, I'm surprised Spags didn't blitz as much. And the perimeter of the field was to be had based on who is the weakest links on the field right now, based on the offensive line playing well.
And one thing to also take into account when a corner allows a reception, how was the throw? How was the route? Because if it was a great throw and that's what it took, moving forward, you can still have some confidence because that's the goal as a corner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, McDuffie got beat once too. Can you consistently force tough throws? And they forced some tough throws. So I want to see it because this particular game I don't think was a great example of that. Now, the Chiefs obviously disagreed to an extent because they were pursuing Lattimore. They did want to get a corner. But I think that's in part because they love being able to revert to that man stuff. And I will say that my biggest concern was still seeing a few moments, like on that crosser to, I think, Palmer at the end.
Oh, boy.
It feels to me like there should have been a corner there. And if it was indeed Williams who was supposed to be on that side of the field, Williams has a habit of tracking receivers deep when he's supposed to be staying in his zone. I got a feeling that might have been that too. So that concerns me. But honestly, it was a really good pass rush, a really good offensive lineman or line that slowed down the pass rush. I think that was the time, I believe their coordinator, Cohen, he's a McVay guy, right? Kind of different, even though McVay and Shanahan are always connected. Their offenses are pretty different. Spags has always done a number on Shanahan guys for the most part. McVay guys have had a little more success against him. And that's where, but the thing that does concern me the most is the lack of pressure. Because if you're eventually going to be facing a really good schemed up group like the Lions in the Super Bowl or something like that, and you got to be able to get that pressure home.
Right.
But in terms of the corners, there's some concern for me, but I want to see it play out another couple weeks because a lot of that was schemed up.
Also worth noting, Joshua Uche barely played, and the Chiefs did address the pass rush issue. The trade deadline did come and go without them adding at corner. I'm not gonna have time to get all the way through kind of my cornerback angle. Maybe we circle back on that on Thursday and see if people have calmed down a little bit. Because I also am finding it a little bit odd given some circumstances that I'll unpack on Thursday. But even before the Marshawn Lattimore trade was reported, the reporting from two of the big names in national insidership, Schefter said the Chiefs have been linked. Rappaport said the Chiefs have been in it. It was past tense before the trade was done.
Yeah.
I'm very, very open to you. Thumbs up, thumbs down on this. But that information's obviously coming from the Saints because only the Saints know who has been making offers to the Saints.
To a degree, yeah.
They released to the insiders, hey, the Commanders have made a hard push, but there are other teams interested, and those champions are sniffing around too. So if anybody else wants to come in and make us a better offer, or maybe just offer us a third so we can get a little bit more out of the Commanders, that sure would be great. So why don't you fellas go ahead and put out there that the Chiefs are still sniffing around, when in reality they have sniffed around. The Chiefs being interested in Lattimore is not surprising to me. If they called the Saints and said, hey, I might have to be a sixth and next in the year after or something else because of the way that their picks are tied up. But if the Chiefs said, hey, here's a package of day 3 picks from Marshawn Lattimore, his salary's flexible enough, I could have seen it. In no world could I have seen them trading the L'Jarius Sneed pick for a player who's virtually the same age as L'Jarius Sneed after deciding this offseason they didn't need to pay L'Jarius Sneed. it was too expensive for a rental, and it's not a good enough value to now suddenly like reset your Trent McDuffie timeline, perhaps, on paying him. I don't want to mess with that. I don't think that this made particular sense with the terms that the Saints needed to get back for Lattimore, and the fact that they didn't get connected to any other corners in this process makes me think they were checking out a really, really good player to see his value, and when there was not a really, really good player available, they didn't make a move at corner. Like, I feel like that should be pretty telling.
Yeah, and I think for the audience, if they're not aware, remind me, Josh, the Commanders exchanged 3 picks for Lattimore. Is that correct?
I think it was a 3-4-6, and then gave back one more somewhere in there. But yes, ended up being more than a third collectively.
Yes.
And so that's the line the Chiefs are willing to go. Is a 3rd round pick. One has to assume, although I don't have this nailed down, that it was going to be their 3rd round pick versus the pick they have from the Titans, which as of right now is projected a lot higher in the draft than where the Chiefs are. Now, because of the Saints situation, they did want multiple picks. They are in, as we all know, cap hell, because they're always in cap hell.
Yeah.
And they want as many picks as possible for a rebuild with a new head coach. And it's a reset for them. The Chiefs did sniff around this morning. They were players, but you get outbid. And to Josh's point, if you feel like the value is too much, then you're going to hold to your line and stay patient, and you can address this situation next year, even if Jalen Watson comes back healthy, obviously, because he'll still be on his rookie deal. The expression I got yesterday was that the Chiefs necessarily didn't want to give up a 3rd round pick, but that was as high as they were going to go. And of course, the Saints, based on their timeline, do not really want a 2026 pick, which is what the Patriots got for Joshua Oche. So at that point, yes, the Chiefs, I think, were largely used as leverage to generate more interest and to maximize as much value as you could get for Lattimore, who's a good player, for the remainder of the season. The Commanders, I believe, have more cap space, and they have a rookie on a rookie contract, and so it's a decent gamble for them. But if people want to know, it's a collection of picks and a 3rd round pick against your 3rd round pick, and so it doesn't make sense for the Saints to take that, considering that your 3rd round pick essentially starts the 4th round, as we are currently standing, based on the Chiefs being the only team with an undefeated record.
We'll talk more about the corners on Thursday, because I do think the conversation there has been interesting, but we'll break that down then. You can, of course, read Nate's work on The Athletic over there in the New York Times cinematic universe, and you can read Seth's work at the Chiefs of the North newsletter, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. We're doing this show on a Tuesday, the day after a game. We've done it a few times now, but we'll continue rolling out content. I continue to write on chiefsonsi.com. That's accessible there. So if you want to read us instead of just hearing our perfect, not at all numbed faces here in podcast form, you can check all those out. Seth, I do think it got better as the show went on, it seemed, or at least became maybe I fittingly just became numb to it.
Nice. I know I've got a little feeling back, so we'll see how I'm doing Thursday.
Hey,
I would like the other side of your face to be numb on Thursday. Nate, get us out of here.
Yeah, we're gonna give a shout out to, can't believe I'm about to say this, Fat White, who on Twitter said the 2 most important follows of the day are both named Nate. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I knew the situation. I was doing other things that hopefully you will read on The Athletic later on. I think about, 10, 11, I realized they probably weren't going to make a trade. But I love the fact that Fat White considers this guy as important as this guy today. Nate Silver of 538, formerly of the New York Times, formerly my desk mate in the New York Times building way back in 2012, kids. What a time to be alive. back when elections were a lot more easier to project.
I muted both of you, Nates.
What I got to do to get you back, man? I ain't gonna say nothing tonight. I ain't gonna say nothing to lose my job.